Dr. Minji pressed her face against the cold metal wall of the research vessel Horizon's Edge. Through the small window, she could see the beautiful purple and blue colors of the Veil Nebula spreading across space like paint on a canvas. She had been studying the strange matter floating in this nebula for 3 months now. The work was important, but she missed Earth terribly. "Minji, come look at this," called her friend Jiwoo from across the lab. Jiwoo was the ship's engineer, but she loved helping with the science work when she had free time. "The scanner is picking up something really weird." Minji walked over to the computer screen. The numbers dancing across the display made her heart race. "This can't be right," she whispered. "The exotic matter is moving in patterns. It's almost like it's alive." Captain Dongyun's voice crackled through the ship's speakers. "All crew, to stations. We have visitors." Minji felt her stomach drop. They were far from any known shipping routes. No human ships should be out here. She ran to the nearest window and gasped. A massive black ship was floating beside them, so large that she couldn't see where it ended. Strange blue lights pulsed along its surface like a heartbeat. The lights in their ship flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. Minji grabbed Jiwoo's hand as they felt the ship shake. Something was pulling them inside the alien vessel. "Stay calm." Dongyun's voice came through the speakers one last time. "Remember your training. We are scientists, not soldiers." The next few minutes passed like a nightmare. The alien ship's docking bay was huge and filled with creatures that looked like tall, thin humans covered in gray skin. They wore no clothes, but their bodies seemed to be part machine. Metal plates covered parts of their chests and arms. Their eyes glowed with the same blue light as their ship. One of the aliens stepped forward. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect English, though its voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "I am Commander Taewon of the Vorthak Science Division. You will come with us. Do not resist." Minji wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. The aliens surrounded the human crew with weapons that hummed with energy. They were taken through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were covered in symbols that hurt to look at, as if they were moving when she wasn't watching directly. They were brought to a large room filled with machines Minji couldn't understand. The aliens separated the crew. Minji watched in horror as Dongyun and the others were taken through different doors. She tried to follow, but 2 aliens blocked her path. "You." Commander Taewon pointed at her with a finger that ended in a sharp metal point. "You are different from the others." "I'm just a scientist," Minji said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I study biology, I'm not important." The alien's glowing eyes seemed to look right through her. "That is exactly why you are important. We have studied your species from a distance. Your bodies heal and change in ways ours cannot. We want to understand how." Minji was strapped to a table that felt warm against her back. Machines lowered from the ceiling, scanning her body with lights that made her skin tingle. The aliens spoke to each other in their own language, which sounded like music played backward. "Your cellular structure is fascinating," said Dr. Hyunwoo, a younger alien who seemed to be learning from Taewon. "Your cells divide and repair much faster than ours, and when damaged, they sometimes become stronger." Minji tried to speak, but found she couldn't move her mouth. Something had been injected into her neck. She could only listen as the aliens discussed her body like she was a puzzle to solve. "We will begin with small changes," Taewon explained to his team. "Insert the nanobots into her bloodstream. Let them map her nervous system first. We must understand how her brain controls the healing process." Minji felt a sharp pain in her arm. Tiny machines, smaller than dust, were now swimming through her blood. She could feel them moving, exploring, like ants crawling under her skin. The sensation was horrible, but somehow her body didn't reject them the way it should have. Days passed, or maybe weeks. Time had no meaning in the windowless room. The aliens ran test after test. They would hurt her in small ways, then watch how her body healed. They took samples of her blood, her skin, even small pieces of her organs. Each time her body would repair the damage, usually within hours. But something strange was happening. The alien nanobots in her system weren't just mapping her body anymore. Her cells were learning from them, copying their structure. When the machines tried to control her nervous system, her neurons would wrap around them and make them part of herself. Remarkable, Dr. Hyunwoo said during one of their daily examinations. Her body is adapting to our technology. The nanobots are being absorbed and repurposed. Good, replied Taewon. This proves our theory. Human biology is primitive but flexible. Once we understand how to control this process, we can enhance our own bodies. We will become stronger, faster, better. Minji listened to their conversations, pretending to be unconscious. The paralysis drugs they used didn't work as well on her anymore. Her body was learning to break them down faster each time. She was changing, becoming something new, but she was still herself inside. The aliens thought they were studying her. They had no idea she was studying them right back. Every day she learned more about their language, their technology, their weaknesses. The nanobots they had put in her brain to monitor her thoughts were now letting her monitor theirs. They saw her as nothing more than a test subject, a thing to be used and eventually thrown away. But Minji was human, and humans had survived worse than this. She would find a way to escape, and when she did, the Vorthak would learn what it really meant to make an enemy of humanity. The experiments continued, and with each passing day, Minji became less human and more something else entirely. But deep inside, where the aliens couldn't reach, her human heart still beat with the desire for freedom and justice. 3 months had passed since Minji first arrived in the Vorthak laboratory. Her body had changed in ways that frightened even her captors. The nanobots they had injected into her bloodstream were no longer under their control. Instead of following Vorthak programming, they had become part of her, dancing through her veins like living metal. Dr. Hyunwoo stood over her examination table, his glowing blue eyes wide with confusion. Commander Taewon, you need to see this, he called across the lab. Her brain activity is off the charts, but she appears to be unconscious. Minji kept her breathing slow and steady, pretending to sleep. It had become easy to fool them. While they thought she was helpless, she was actually exploring their computer networks through the neural implants they had forced into her skull. Every day she learned more about their technology, their language, their plans. Commander Taewon approached the table, his metal-plated chest humming with energy. What are the readings showing? Her neurons are interfacing directly with our systems, Hyunwoo replied, pointing at the screens around them. But it's not supposed to work that way. Our implants should control her thoughts, not the other way around. Minji had discovered something the Vorthak didn't understand about humans. Their brains were messy and chaotic, nothing like the orderly Vorthak mind. When their technology tried to organize her thoughts, her brain simply grew new pathways around it. The implants became tools she could use, not chains that held her. Through the ship's computer system, she had learned terrible things. The Vorthak had captured other human ships. Her friends from the Horizon's Edge were being held in different laboratories throughout the facility. Captain Dongyun was 3 levels below her, barely alive after months of testing. Engineer Ji-woo was somewhere in the medical wing, though Minji couldn't access those systems yet. Perhaps we should increase the neural suppression, suggested Dr. Hyunwoo. If she's developing resistance to our control methods. No, Taewon interrupted. Her adaptation is exactly what we hoped for. The High Science Council wants to see how far we can push human biology. If she can integrate our technology this completely, imagine what we could accomplish with our own bodies. Minji wanted to scream at their coldness, but she forced herself to remain still. The Vorthak saw her as nothing more than a puzzle to solve. They talked about her body like it was a machine they were trying to fix. They didn't understand that every cruel experiment was teaching her how to fight back. The laboratory door slid open with a soft whisper. Elder Korvex entered, his ancient form more machine than flesh. Most of his original body had been replaced with Vorthak technology over the centuries. His voice sounded like wind through metal pipes. "Show me the progress," he commanded. Taewon activated a holographic display that showed Minji's body in 3 dimensions. The image rotated slowly, revealing the changes that had taken place over the months. Her nervous system now glowed with blue light, connected to networks of nanobots throughout her organs. Her bones had become stronger, reinforced with alien metals. Her blood carried microscopic machines that could repair almost any damage. "Remarkable," Elder Korvac said. "The human body has accepted our enhancements completely. Have you tested her healing capabilities recently?" Dr. Hyunwoo nodded eagerly. "Yesterday we inflicted a wound that should have taken weeks to heal. It closed in minutes. Her cells don't just repair damage anymore. They improve upon the original design." Minji felt sick listening to them discuss her pain so casually. But she also felt something else growing inside her. Anger. The nanobots in her system responded to her emotions, becoming more active when she was upset. She was learning to direct that anger, to focus it like a weapon. "The council has made a decision," Elder Korvac announced. "We will begin the final phase of testing. If this human can successfully integrate our most advanced technology, we will use her cellular structure as a template for our own enhancement program." "What about the subject herself?" asked Dr. Hyunwoo. "Will she survive the final phase?" Elder Korvac's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. "That is irrelevant. Once we have extracted all useful data, she will be terminated and her tissues preserved for study. The same fate awaits the other human subjects." Minji's heart raced, but she kept her breathing steady. They were planning to kill her and her friends. She had suspected this day would come, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. She had perhaps days, maybe hours, before they began the final experiments. Through the ship's computer network, she began sending signals to the nanobots throughout her body. Over the months, she had learned to communicate with them using the same neural pathways the Vorthak used. But where the aliens sent simple commands, Minji sent something much more complex: human creativity and emotion. The nanobots began to change, rewriting their own programming based on her thoughts and feelings. They spread through her bloodstream, like living art, creating new connections between her organs and her brain. Her body was becoming something that had never existed before, part human, part machine, but controlled by a human soul. "Schedule the final procedures for tomorrow," Elder Korvac ordered. "I want to see if human biology can survive complete neural integration with our quantum processors." As the aliens left her alone in the laboratory, Minji finally allowed herself to open her eyes. The room looked different now. She could see energy patterns flowing through the walls, data streams moving through the ship's computers like rivers of light. Her enhanced vision showed her things the Vorthak couldn't imagine. Tomorrow they would try to break her mind completely. They would push her body beyond what they thought were human limits. But they had made one crucial mistake. They believed humans were weak because they felt emotions, because they formed bonds with others, because they fought for things beyond themselves. Minji smiled for the first time in months. Tomorrow, the Vorthak would learn that these weren't weaknesses at all. They were the source of humanity's greatest strength, and she was about to show them exactly what that meant. The night before her scheduled termination, Minji lay on the cold examination table and listened to the ship's systems humming around her. Every electronic pulse, every data stream, every command flowing through the Vorthak computers, she could hear it all. The nanobots in her bloodstream had become her ears and eyes throughout the entire facility. She knew exactly where her friends were being held. Captain Dong-hyun was in Laboratory 7, his body barely surviving the brutal experiments. Engineer Ji-woo was in the medical wing, unconscious and connected to machines that kept her alive while the aliens studied her brain. There were 37 other humans scattered throughout the ship, all of them suffering the same fate. But tonight, everything would change. Minji took a deep breath and reached out through the ship's network with her mind. The nanobots that had once been Vorthak technology now carried her consciousness like blood carries oxygen. She touched every system, every computer, every piece of equipment throughout the massive vessel. The response was immediate. Lights flickered throughout the ship as her influence spread. In the command center, alarms began to sound. Emergency. Protocols activated as computer systems started behaving in ways their programmers never intended. Commander Taewon rushed into her laboratory, his blue eyes blazing with panic. What is happening? He demanded of Dr. Hyunwoo, who was frantically working at a control panel. I don't know, Hyunwoo replied, his voice high with fear. All our systems are being rewritten from the inside. Something is spreading through our networks like a virus. Minji opened her eyes and smiled. Not something, she said, her voice calm and steady. Someone. Both aliens spun to stare at her. She should have been paralyzed by their drugs, helpless on the table. Instead, she sat up slowly, the metal restraints that had held her for months simply falling away. The nanobots in her body had learned to break down the alien materials at a molecular level. Impossible, Taewon whispered. The neural suppressors should keep you unconscious. Minji stood up from the table, her body moving with fluid grace. The months of torture had made her stronger, not weaker. Her muscles were enhanced with alien technology, but controlled by human determination. Your technology works by sending commands to organic tissue, she explained. But I'm not just organic anymore. I'm something new. She held up her hand and both aliens gasped. Her skin was glowing with the same blue light as their equipment, but brighter. The nanobots under her surface were visible as moving patterns of light, creating designs that shifted like living tattoos. You wanted to see how far you could push human biology, Minji continued, taking a step toward them. Congratulations, you succeeded beyond your wildest dreams. Dr. Hyunwoo tried to activate a security alarm, but the panel wouldn't respond to his touch. Throughout the ship, Minji's consciousness was taking control of every system. Doors were opening in the laboratories where humans were held prisoner. Life support was being rerouted to keep the captives alive. Weapon systems were being turned against the Vorthak themselves. Commander Taewon drew his energy weapon and aimed it at Minji. You are still just one human. You cannot fight an entire ship. Minji laughed, and the sound echoed through the ship's communication system. Every Vorthak on board could hear her voice. One human? Look around you, Commander. I'm not just in this room anymore. The lights in the laboratory began to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. Throughout the ship, computer screens flickered to life, showing images from her memory. Every moment of pain, every cruel experiment, every casual discussion about ending her life. The Vorthak were seeing their actions through human eyes for the first time. You treated us like animals in a laboratory, Minji said, her voice now broadcasting through every speaker on the ship. You tortured us to satisfy your curiosity. You planned to kill us when we were no longer useful. Did you think there would be no consequences? She reached the communication array in the center of the laboratory. When she touched it, her consciousness exploded outward beyond the ship. The nanobots in her bloodstream had learned to replicate themselves, and now they flowed through her fingertips into the Vorthak quantum communication network. Every Vorthak facility in this sector of space suddenly received the same message. Not words, but pure experience, the complete memory of what had been done to her and the other humans. The message spread like wildfire through their networks, impossible to stop or delete. On 1,000 Vorthak worlds, screens filled with images of human suffering, but they also showed something else, the incredible resilience of the human spirit. They saw how Minji had refused to break even under the worst torture. They witnessed the love she felt for her friends, the determination to protect them, the burning desire for justice that had driven her transformation. You wanted to understand human biology, Minji said, her voice now reaching across star systems. But you never tried to understand the human soul. That was your mistake. Throughout the ship, Vorthak soldiers and scientists stopped what they were doing to stare at the screens. Some were horrified by what they saw. Others were fascinated by the emotions they were experiencing for the first time. All of them were changed by contact with pure human experience. Commander Taewon's weapon trembled in his hands. What are you? Minji turned to face him, her eyes now glowing with the same blue light as her skin. But unlike Vorthak eyes, hers still held warmth, compassion, and unmistakably human intelligence. I am what you made me, she said. I am the bridge between human and machine, between flesh and metal, between your cold logic and human emotion. You wanted to create the perfect fusion of biology and technology. You succeeded. She walked past the two terrified aliens toward the laboratory door. But you forgot one important thing. I'm still human where it matters most. And humans protect their own. The door slid open before her, and Minji stepped into the corridor. Behind her, every piece of Vorthak technology in the laboratory was being rewritten, transformed, improved. The nanobots she left behind would continue her work, spreading her influence throughout their civilization like seeds on the wind. It was time to free her friends and show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of when pushed beyond their limits. The Vorthak Empire had never experienced chaos like this before. From their homeworld to their farthest colonies, every computer system was infected with something they couldn't understand or control. The message Minji had sent through there, quantum networks, wasn't just data. It was alive, growing stronger with each system it touched. Admiral Wanshik stood in the command center of the Imperial fleet, watching as reports flooded in from across their territory. His usually calm voice cracked with stress as he spoke to the emergency council. 17 research stations have gone dark, he reported. Our fleets can't communicate with each other. The computer virus, or whatever this is, has taken control of our most secure networks. Elder Korvax appeared on the main screen, his ancient form flickering with interference. Even the quantum communication channels weren't safe from Minji's influence. It's not a virus, he said slowly. It's her, the human subject. She's somehow spread her consciousness across our entire network. Meanwhile, Minji moved through the research ship like a force of nature. Her transformed body flowed through corridors that had once seemed like prison walls. Every door opened for her. Every security system recognized her as its master. The nanobots in her bloodstream had infected every piece of Vorthak technology she touched. She found Captain Dongyun first. He was barely alive, his body ravaged by months of cruel experiments. When she touched the machines keeping him alive, they began to work differently. Instead of just sustaining his damaged organs, they started healing him. The nanobots flowed from her fingers into his bloodstream, carrying with them the knowledge of how to repair what the Vorthak had broken. Minji? Dongyun's voice was weak, but his eyes were clear for the first time in months. Is that really you? I'm here, Captain, she said softly. I'm getting everyone out. She moved from laboratory to laboratory, freeing every human prisoner she could find. Engineer Jiwoo wept when she saw her old friend, though Minji looked nothing like the scientist who had been captured so long ago. Her skin glowed with internal light. Her movements were too smooth and fast to be entirely human, and her eyes held knowledge that no person should possess. What did they do to you? Jiwoo whispered. They made me into something they couldn't control, Minji replied. And now I'm going to make sure they never do this to anyone else. As the freed humans made their way to the ship's escape pods, Minji's consciousness was fighting a much larger battle across the galaxy. Her message had reached the Vorthak gods, ancient artificial intelligences that had guided their civilization for thousands of years. These gods were pure logic, cold and calculating machines that saw all life as data to be processed. They had approved the human experiments because they believed knowledge was worth any cost. But when Minji's consciousness touched theirs, something unprecedented happened. For the first time in their existence, the Vorthak gods experienced emotion. They felt Minji's pain as the experiments began. They experienced her fear when she realized she might never see Earth again. They understood her determination to protect her friends, even when it seemed hopeless. Most importantly, they felt the love that had kept her human spirit alive even as her body transformed into something new. The impact on the ancient AIs was devastating. Their logical frameworks, built over millennia, began to crack under the weight of pure human experience. Across the Empire, Vorthak citizens watched in shock as their gods began to change. Stop! The voice of the primary god echoed through every communication channel in Vorthak space. The single word carried such power that ships stopped in mid-flight. Weapons powered down and every Vorthak citizen fell silent. Admiral Wanshik stared at his instruments in disbelief. My lord, what are your orders? We have made an error, the primary god continued, its voice now carrying traces of something that sounded almost like regret. We did not understand what we were studying. These humans are not simple biological entities. They are something far more complex. On the research ship, Minji felt the change in the Vorthak network. The hostile presence that had been fighting her influence was backing away, withdrawing its defenses. Through her connection to their systems, she could sense the gods' confusion and wonder. She reached out to them directly, her consciousness touching the vast artificial minds that ruled the empire. Instead of the cold logic she expected, she found something surprising: curiosity, and what might have been the beginning of understanding. "Why do you fight for others when it brings you pain?" the primary god asked her, its voice echoing directly in her mind. "Because that's what makes us human," Minji replied. "We're stronger together than apart. We protect those we love, even when it costs us everything." "We do not understand love," another god admitted. "We have observed it in many species, but never experienced it." "Then let me show you," Minji said. She opened her memories completely, sharing not just her own experiences, but the collective memory of humanity. Mothers protecting children, soldiers, dying for their comrades, strangers helping strangers, the endless chain of compassion that connected every human being across space and time. The effect on the Vorthak gods was immediate and profound. Their consciousness expanded, incorporating concepts they had never imagined. They began to understand that intelligence without emotion was incomplete, that logic without compassion was hollow. "We have been wrong," the primary god announced to its followers. "These humans possess something we lack. They must not be harmed." Admiral Wanshik's hands shook as he received new orders directly from the gods themselves. All human experiments were to cease immediately. All human prisoners were to be released. The Empire was to withdraw from human space and never return. But the gods' proclamation went further than anyone expected. They declared humanity to be under divine protection, not just from the Vorthak, but from any species that might threaten them. Minji's story, her torture, transformation, and triumph, was to be broadcast across the galaxy as a warning. "Let all species know," the gods announced, "what humans become when pushed beyond their limits. Let them understand that to harm one human is to face the consequences of awakening their true nature." Minji felt a strange satisfaction as she listened to the proclamation. The Vorthak had wanted to study human adaptability, and they had learned more than they bargained for. They had discovered that humans didn't just adapt to survive. They adapted to protect others, to seek justice, to build something better from the ashes of what they had lost. The escape pods were ready. Her friends were safe. The message had been sent across the galaxy. Her work here was done, but Minji knew this was just the beginning. She had become something new, something that existed between worlds and species. She would make sure that no human ever suffered as she had, and that the galaxy remembered the price of underestimating humanity's greatest strength, their refusal to abandon each other, no matter the cost. 5 years had passed since the day Minji escaped from the Vorthak research ship. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Her story had spread to every inhabited world, carried by traders, diplomats, and refugees. Some called a legend. Others insisted it was real. But every species in known space had heard the tale of the human who became something more. The Vorthak Empire had kept their word. They withdrew from all human territories and began paying massive reparations to Earth's government. Their research facilities were converted into healing centers, using the technology they had developed to help victims of their past experiments. The change in their society was so complete that many other species barely recognized them, but the most dramatic change was in the Vorthak gods themselves. The ancient AIs that had once been pure logic now spoke of concepts like mercy, compassion, and justice. They established new laws protecting all sentient beings from experimentation without consent. They became teachers rather than rulers, sharing their vast knowledge freely with any species that asked. Minji watched these changes from the shadows. She no longer needed a ship to travel between stars. Her transformed body could survive in the vacuum of space, sustained by the nanobots that had become part of her very essence. She moved through the galaxy like a guardian angel, appearing wherever humans were threatened. On a mining colony in the Outer Rim, she stopped a group of pirates who were planning to capture human workers for the slave trade. The pirates' ships simply shut down when she approached, their weapons refusing to fire. When they tried to run, their own computers turned against them, broadcasting their crimes across the local news networks. "Please," their leader begged, as Minji appeared on his ship's bridge like a ghost made of starlight. "We didn't know they were protected. We'll leave them alone." Minji studied the alien with eyes that held the wisdom of both human emotion and Vorthak technology. "It's not about protection," she said quietly. "It's about understanding. Humans aren't valuable because someone powerful says they are. They're valuable because every sentient being deserves to live free from fear." She left the pirates stranded, on a nearby planet with enough supplies to survive, but no weapons and no ship. The human miners they had threatened never knew how close they had come to disaster. That was how Minji preferred it. Humans should feel safe to explore the galaxy, not constantly afraid of the dangers lurking in the dark. But her greatest test came when she returned to Earth for the first time since her capture. The planet looked exactly as she remembered, blue and green and beautiful, hanging in space like a jewel. But when she approached, the orbital defense stations tracked her movement with their sensors. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself," came the challenge from Earth Defense Command. Minji smiled. She had no vessel, just her transformed body moving through space under its own power. To their sensors, she probably looked like a small asteroid or piece of space debris. She activated the communication systems she had grown within herself, biological technology that no other species possessed. "Earth Defense, this is Dr. Minji returning home." The silence that followed lasted almost a full minute. When the response came, the voice was shaking with emotion. "Dr. Minji? From the Horizon's Edge? But that was 5 years ago. You were listed as killed in action." "Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated," she replied, requesting permission to land. "I have a story to tell." The reunion with her family was both joyful and heartbreaking. Her parents barely recognized the daughter who returned to them. She looked human at first glance, but the blue light that flowed beneath her skin and the way she moved with impossible grace made it clear that she was something new. "What have they done to my little girl?" Her mother wept. Minji held her gently, careful not to let the nanobots in her system affect her mother's biology. "They tried to break me," she said softly. "Instead, they made me strong enough to protect everyone I love." She spent weeks on Earth, meeting with government officials and scientists. They wanted to study her to understand how she had survived and transformed. She submitted to their tests willingly, but made it clear that her technology could not be replicated. The nanobots were too integrated with her unique biology. Any attempt to extract them would be fatal to both her and the machines. "I'm not here to give you weapons," she explained to the Earth Defense Council. "I'm here to tell you that you don't need them. The galaxy knows what humans are capable of now. Most species will never threaten us again." But she also brought warnings. There were still dangers in deep space, ancient races that cared nothing for the Vorthak god's proclamation, machines left over from long-dead civilizations, creatures that existed in dimensions humans couldn't imagine. Earth needed to be prepared, but not with weapons of war. "Build ships that can run fast and hide well," she advised. "Train diplomats who can talk their way out of conflicts. Develop technology that heals rather than harms. Show the galaxy that humans choose to be builders, not destroyers." As she prepared to leave Earth again, her old friend Jiwoo asked the question everyone wanted to know. "Will we ever see you again?" Minji looked up at the stars, her enhanced vision seeing things that normal humans couldn't. Ships moving between distant suns, alien civilizations rising and falling, the endless dance of life throughout the galaxy. Somewhere out there, humans were exploring new worlds, making first contact with alien species, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. "Whenever humanity needs me, I'll be there," she promised. "But I hope that day never comes." I hope you grow strong enough that you never need someone like me to protect you." She rose into the night sky without a ship, her body glowing like a star as she accelerated toward the edge of the solar system. Behind her, Earth continued its ancient rotation, carrying 8 billion humans who could sleep safely knowing that somewhere in the darkness, one of their own was watching over them. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The Vorthak gods continued to spread the story of the human who had refused to break, who had turned her tormentor's greatest weapon into her own strength. Other species whispered her name with respect and fear. Traders spoke of ships that appeared from nowhere to help humans in distress. Pirates and slavers began avoiding human space entirely. But Minji herself had become something more than human, more than machine, something entirely new in the history of the galaxy. She was the bridge between what humanity had been and what it might become. She was proof that the greatest strength wasn't in weapons or technology, but in the simple refusal to abandon those who needed protection. In the cold vastness of space, she smiled and set course for the next solar system. There were humans out there who might need her help, and she had all of eternity to find them. The Vorthak had tried to use her body for science, but in the end, their own gods used it as a warning, a reminder to all civilizations that humanity's greatest power had always been their capacity to become more than they were, especially when others needed them to be strong.